Firefox OS is not targeted at the US, but targeted at emerging markets. Mostly markets where the web has not fully been introduced, markets where people are accessing the web exclusively through mobile carriers and not necessarily through wired connections, and emerging economies like that. There is no native layer. It is fully web-based. As it says, the hardware access happens via a Linux core, but apart from that, the operating system and apps are all HTML5, as well as JavaScript and CSS. All you really need to know is HTML5. At the time this presentation was written, we shipped end-user phones in Spain, Poland, Venezuela, and Colombia. Colombia is misspelled here, it seems. Columbia the country, not Columbia the university, just to clear that up for anybody that's confused. We are also selling it in Serbia, Montenegro, Hungary, as well as, I believe, Austria, Mexico, Chile, Singapore, I think. This summer, it will come to India in the form of a $25 smartphone. That's $25 without contracts, without carrier subsidies. And by the end of the year, somewhere in Africa is what we're targeting. There are currently 20 or so carrier partners that we've made all around the world that are carrying and selling these devices. So, we want Firefox OS, and we really believe that Firefox OS is the mobile platform that HTML5 deserves. Because Firefox is so reliable, it already has a pretty big reputation around the world, users can feel confident that there will be very predictable and reliable browser support through Firefox OS because of the attention that we've given to Firefox Desktop. Anyone familiar with Firefox Desktop will become familiar with Firefox OS. We're aiming at new markets. Don't you love this little Calvin Hobbes rendition of Firefox? I do. So, yes, we're targeting new emerging markets. Thanks to eliminating a lot of the technology stack within these phones, we can actually ship very affordable phones because of the lower hardware requirements. No credit card is needed. There's actual client building. That's the restriction that we put on our carrier partners. Web technologies through and through. And at the time of this presentation, we had 18 mobile partners and 4 hardware partners. That's now extended to over 20 and around 8 hardware partners. You may or may not have heard in the news that Qualcomm is making tablets for Firefox OS, for example. Panasonic will be making TVs and other electronic devices with Firefox OS on. So, a lot to look forward to. Howdy. So, everything is an open standard or is a proposed standard at this point. Because we rely heavily on HTML5, we also, all of us know that HTML5 is not a fully adopted standard yet, but it is proposed, and we have been very, very heavily involved with the standards bodies to improve on that.
How many of these things are you guys proposing in order to get what you need in the operating system?
A lot of it is actually the APIs.
Okay.
So we've done another part of why we wanted to create the operating system was because within these closed stacks like Android and iOS, APIs for being able to have accessibility to the hardware were entirely closed and proprietary. The web simply hadn't advanced far enough to be able to have that type of access, and nobody thought that it could. And we wanted to say, forget you, we can prove you wrong, and create our own. Yeah.
Is there a chance that Microsoft and Google won't want to follow along with those APIs?
You know, I don't know how to answer that, to be completely honest. but we have been advocating within these standards bodies to adopt support for these open APIs, and my understanding is that they've been very supportive. So there is a lot of documentation all about how to build apps. How many of you are currently app developers? Yeah? So let me ask you the question that's right here. What is it that makes an app great?
Oh, sorry, you're talking about a mobile app. Sorry,
Yeah.
no.
No?
I was just thinking app development as in web app development.
Even a web app. What makes a web app great?
Fast user experience.
Okay.
Something simple that does the job well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think that those two elements differ between mobile apps and web apps?
Usually things are simpler on mobile,
Uh-huh.
or it's more steps to do the same thing. On the desktop, you might have every option right in front of you.
Mm-hmm. It's true. When you actually are developing a web app for mobile, you do have to simplify it greatly. Isn't that right? If you have a user that's accessing it through Safari, you have to be able to create a web app that is tailored for mobile.
Single thumb support.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So all of that also applies here. So Firefox OS apps are HTML5 apps with an extra manifest file, which defines the extra access to hardware that you need, as well as the icons and location of your code. They have a 3-layer security model, which we'll go into. They work offline and across other platforms when converted, and that's just another thing that we'll kind of allude to a little bit. We've teamed up with PhoneGap to be able to help to create native Java or native iOS apps from HTML5 apps. And you can find and install them either from the web or from the marketplace directly. So here's essentially what that extra manifest looks like. Pretty simple, right? Those 3 levels of security access are hosted apps, which are stored on your server and have limited access, privileged, which are packaged and signed and reviewed by the App Store, and certified ones, which are part of the OS and are traditionally only delivered by Mozilla and partners. Essentially any app that you see on the phone after you open it up and pull it out of the box. Installing apps from the web. This is just a little piece of code, like what was previously mentioned, that you can input into your app in order to have it installed from the web. Web APIs, the thing that most of you, yes?
Does the manifest define what gets cached onto the phone, that it doesn't have to reload from the server, or?
I believe it does, because it is also identifying the location of your code. And so I'm sure that part of that is also what is cached.
Okay.
So here are some of the web APIs that we've been talking about. We got a web telephony, there's the vibration, SMS, screen orientation. All of those are web APIs that we have had to develop and present to these standards bodies. And even you can see at the bottom. So I believe that most of these presentations are going to be hosted later so that anybody that came to the conference can see them. There's a wiki, and this is a screenshot taken from that wiki, containing all of the information about those APIs. So these specifications allow access to the hardware, because when we're talking about Firefox OS, we're talking about operating system, kernel, hardware. These APIs actually allow you to go through the Linux kernel very quickly and have direct access to the hardware of the phone. Created with and submitted to standards bodies. Really plain JavaScript is involved in these. We don't want developers to feel uncomfortable or have to go out and learn a whole bunch of new stuff to be able to make these. That's part of the appeal of Firefox OS to developers. It's supposed to be easy. We don't want you to have to learn a whole new ecosystem. The The web is the platform. If you're familiar with the web, you should be able to create an app. So, different types of apps, hosted apps. You've got all of these different APIs that we have been collaboratively working with standards bodies to incorporate into JavaScript standards and things. For example, here is what part of the battery API looks like. If you're familiar with JavaScript, it really doesn't look too far off from what you would already be familiar with. So for privileged apps, you've got the device storage API, browser API, TCP socket. Wasn't it you that asked me yesterday about socket APIs? There you go. So, and you'll remember that privileged apps are those that have actually had a seal of approval put on them and are actually shipped through the marketplace, right? So these are the APIs that are then available to you after having that. So here's, for example, the contacts API. Once again, not too far off what you'd already be familiar with. And then certified apps, the ones that come from our carrier partners as well as from us, utilize a lot of these particular APIs. Yes?
So the other ones are only given if you are going through your guys' marketplace, correct?
I think it's more that I may have misspoken. It's more that they are usable through our marketplace.
So what?
Like because they involve an extra layer of security, we want to be able to make sure we have a responsibility to people that actually download apps through our marketplace to be able to provide them with secure apps. And so because those require more information from the user and more, security, that we need to be able to actually approve of the app.
Doesn't that prevent Chrome and Chrome and Internet Explorer from implementing those same things because they don't have access to being a permission authority?
I don't know how to answer that.
Okay.
If Chrome were to implement the APIs, they would implement the security layer themselves. They'd have their own Chrome app store, and they would do the same thing.
Okay.
So it's not that it's not that we're restricting access. It's just that if you're going to go through us to distribute, then we need to be able to approve of use of those. Otherwise, you can go the route that, as Shane described, creating your own marketplace and all of that. So it's not inhibiting them from doing that, it's more providing reliability to users.
So I wouldn't be able to write one app and be able to expect it to work if I want TCP connections on every single browser. I have to write that one app and then have separate fragmentation for each kind of security authority. Correct?
Well, I actually don't have any idea what kind of security mechanisms Chrome OS has, so I wouldn't really be able to answer that. I don't even know if they have the same APIs as what Firefox OS has. Some of them I would expect are the same, and some of them I would expect are different. So you could have fragmentation there in your app as far as what APIs you'd be using and stuff like that.
Okay.
But the bulk of your app should just be HTML, JavaScript, CSS.
Thank you. So, some web activities. I'm not going to lie, I'm not incredibly familiar with this particular part. Shane, do you know anything about this part of the?
Yeah, I actually did a lot of early work on web activities, so I can kind of.
The general gist of web activities is it's an API that a web page can browser or the OS basically can look up and see, okay, like these 5 apps support that action, present a UI to the user to choose, and then it launches into that app. And you've got parameters that you pass through that then go through to the app. And you also, well, I'm not current with what the current Web Activities API is, but I believe they were talking about having a port that you could communicate back and forth with. But it's kind of like Android Intense.
Okay.
So here's some of the parts of that API. Here's how you would theoretically send a number to the phone through that API. Or get an image from the phone.
So wait, getting an image from the phone, there's already a standard API for that though, right? Like on an iPhone, you just specify input file type equals, or you put like a semicolon or something after type equals file type, and you specify image, and then it'll bring up the wallpaper, gallery, or camera. And I think that's the same on Android.
Well, the difference, and Shane, you correct me if I'm wrong, the difference, I believe, is that we've had to actually create this new API to be web-based, whereas I don't believe that those are
No. Like I could
web-based functions, right?
I could open up my iPhone. Well, it's not a function. It's HTML.
Input form.
Okay.
So I guess this would provide more advantages because there'd be cases where, well, the input field is terrible in HTML because you can't style it or change it or anything. So I guess this solves that problem, and probably some others.
So this isn't necessarily a replacement of that, as it would be adding robustness to it.
Okay, so does it also support that, do you know, the input type?
I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry.
So this is allowing you to programmatically access the data after the user is given pre-thought permission to that, versus with the HTML input, every upload has to get its own permission, correct? So once they grant this, you can programmatically access.
Yes, I believe so.
Right.
Oh, so you could have like take a picture every 10 seconds once they've given permission. It doesn't have to be interaction based, they don't have to click.
I believe so.
Cool. That's really cool.
Viruses.
Well, everything with activities is user input driven.
Right. Or each action is, or just the acceptance of those permissions are?
I'm fairly certain. Okay, so like I said, I worked on the activities API, but that was like 2 years ago.
Right.
So Shane would know more than I do.
There's been a bunch that has changed in that since then. But the initial design that we had was that it had to be a user action.
Okay.
So there's actually a flag on the event object that tells us whether or not that was actually from the OS level a user did this. And this is in regular, I think it's in the HTML event object, but it's certainly at the Firefox browser level, it's in the Chrome event object. That we can see that this was not just a custom event created by JavaScript and HTML, but it was a key press or a click or something like that. And so the initial design was that activities had to be driven by a user event in order to get something started. That may have changed because what happens at this point is once you make this call, the user has to do it. It has to pick something.
Right.
So they could have removed that option or that requirement since the user then has to do something anyway.
Okay. Thanks.
So you're going to do the second part of that.
Are you able to design what my assumption is the pop-up activity that way that that looks. Because right now on Android or iPhone, you click, and it's basically the input form, and it pops up. It's like a web intents pops up its own thing, and you select which app, and then it goes to that native app that you then select.
It's the same thing.
Okay.
It would
But-
have to be for security, right?
Yeah.
So you can't redesign that pop-up. That's beyond your control.
You can redesign anything in Firefox OS. You can put your own CSS into it and all that kind of stuff, but not from an app. You're gonna have to be at a privileged level to do those changes. Because it's all just the entire operating system is HTML, JavaScript, CSS. So you can write a dialer app. You can write, any of these things.
Okay.
But that's where the security stuff that Jeff was talking about comes in, is that, there's the certified apps that actually come on the phone. And a lot of that stuff is actually controlled by the certified apps and the certified code.
Okay.
So you'd have to, be your own certified vendor type
So-
of thing.
As a certified vendor, this API is giving me access to basically the solid state memory, the flash memory on the phone through some uniform API that you guys have provided or the open web standards provide. It's not transferring me to another app, which I'm then selecting files.
Activities is just like intents. So when you have a web app and you say, I want to get a picture, the intent where activity comes up, the user selects an app to collect that picture from, and it goes to that app. And then once the user has made that selection, so if I choose camera in that case, it goes to the camera app, I take a picture, I'm done, and the picture that I just took is returned to your app.
But, sorry, I'm slightly confused. So what did it say if I wanted to build that camera app or that photo gallery app, assuming I have the certification? I'm then using a different API than that?
Yeah, so
Oh.
there's actually a
Okay, the
there's
file
a,
API.
There's a navigator.moz camera
Okay.
API that actually is the direct API to the hardware, and you would use those APIs if you're developing that app. But if you're developing a Pinterest app and you want to take a picture and send it to Pinterest, you're going to use the Web Activities API
To call some
to call some other app to do that for you.
That makes sense now. I was getting those two things confused and mushed together. All right.
Sure.
Thank you. Like I said, I'm very new to this as well, so I'm very glad to have Shane here.
This might be the only thing I can actually answer.
Well, good luck to you for the rest of this workshop, guys. Firefox OS also contains dynamic app search. I believe this is essentially the involvement of everything me, correct? Isn't that part of what they're, I believe that's part of what they're providing. You're able to search the interface of Firefox OS for apps and media. We've teamed up with a search provider called Everything.me. I don't think that their brand name is actually on the phone anymore, or at least in the operating system, because it used to be that you swiped over and it's Everything.me and you search.
This is one of those things that I just can't answer.
Yeah. But it matches your app searches and media searches by topic. So you can enter a film title. The results may contain Netflix, or it may contain other ones that are more relevant. And they can contain these apps that you can download and install directly onto your phone. The UI itself actually delineates between what's on your phone and what isn't by a bar. Whatever is above the bar is actually on your phone. Whatever's below is part of the search results that you can put onto your phone. People that need to know the name of the app that they're looking for, basically, in order to find it. This allows apps to be really kind of the try before you buy type of apps. So clicking on the icon will open it, but they're wouldn't necessarily need to be, you wouldn't need to download and install and discard it out at all by opening it and trying it out through the dynamic search. You could then, however, after you try it, install it onto your phone. It's kind of a really interesting concept because, you know, we don't have that ability on Android to try out an app before we commit to paying $1 for it or anything like that. But so as a developer, your app gets found by what it does, not necessarily by its name or how much you put into your advertising campaign. So nothing gets wasted because it's optimized by HTML5. You can find users quickly and have them trying out your app quickly. You can become the first and most important local app for a particular topic. Yes?
Are these searching URIs and URLs, or are these searching some metadata that exists in Mozilla's centralized database on their server? How are these resources and these, are they, you know, obeying HTTP 1.1 and above, or is this entirely, it may be open but proprietized resource identifiers and locators?
So I don't have an exact answer, but my feeling is that it would be more based on metadata, simply because it's contextualized. You know, you're not looking for a particular name of an app, you're actually looking for what the app does. Similar to what you would do with a web search. You know, you're not necessarily, if you're looking to watch a movie, you may not necessarily be looking specifically for Netflix, but Netflix could be part of that result because of SEO, because of metadata, and all of that sort of stuff.
So does
So I don't think it's part of a centralized Mozilla proprietary
Okay.
web database, but more leveraging what is typically used on the web in order to find what a user is looking for.
So let's say my server would push some metadata to you guys, and you guys are acting just basically as cache there that then people can scan as an index. That then, once they find one they like, references my actual web server. Maybe.
Is the dynamic app search searching a marketplace, or is it searching the web also?
I think it's searching the web also. Because anything, as we talked about earlier in an earlier slide, anything
Well,
on the web or on
That's
the
what I
marketplace
think
can
he's trying to get at is.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I thought.
Is it store-based or?
And I think it's both.
Hey, I'm just wondering, I think you said there was 2 phones in the US available. Is it just the ZTE that's one of them?
ZTE Open and ZTE OpenSea.
Oh, OpenSea. Okay. Okay.
Yep. So here is essentially what that type of search looks like, right? So they're searching for New York Yankees, and of course nothing specific about New York Yankees come up, but sites that have content about the New York Yankees come up, or apps that have content about the New York Yankees come up, and you can actually open them up and preview them before you click, hold, and drag, and download them onto your phone. Here's a short video to illustrate this.
So as I'm typing that, where is that getting sent to?
So, I don't know.
Isn't that everything me?
I think so, yeah.
So it's only looking at my device, my phone. It's not making.
Everything me is a service on the web that we've partnered with
Okay.
to provide that functionality.
Okay. So it's making the requests out to everything me, and everything me is bringing the stuff back in.
Mhm.
I think like Jeff was saying earlier is when you do a search, it will bring stuff up that's on your phone
Well,
already
yeah, okay.
as the first stuff. And then it'll reach out and look at, it probably looks at the marketplace and looks at the web in general.
Yeah, like you would be able to delineate what is actually on your phone and what versus what isn't, if any of this was actually on this individual's phone, by a bar going across the screen, and anything above that bar is actually what's on your phone.
So if you type somebody's name, it might go to the contact list. That's the first thing.
It could.
Don't type chicken if you're in PETA.
So, some tools for development. Unlike iOS and Android, there is no fixed SDK, nor set of IDEs or tools for Firefox OS. Since they are HTML5 apps, there's been really no need to define one specific set of tools. There are some things that can make your life easier and help you to develop quicker. And fortunately, a lot of them come within the browser. With the advent of Firefox OS, Mozilla has also invested a lot in making very, very robust developer tools, not just for websites that are accessible on desktop, but specifically for sites that are accessible via mobile and Firefox OS apps. So these are some of those tools. They are continually advancing. I think since I do localization and I tend to see the string changes between one version of Firefox from one version to the next, about a third of Firefox at this point appears to be developer tools. And it seems like at least 55% of the new changes that come to Firefox, the strings at least, is all within developer tools. And so there's a very, very, very good suite of those developer tools. And as the last bullet says, it's an ongoing thing. There will be more tools than just these to come. So, here are some of these tools. For Firefox OS, the browser itself can be an editor for your particular app using Inspector and other developer tools. They're built into Firefox. They provide a lot of functionality. The developer tools are designed as a toolbox for different features for specialist use cases. And they allow developer tools, this allows our developer tools to evolve without becoming overwhelming. Not every developer needs the same features. So here's some basic developer tools features. You have the inspector, you have console, debugger, style editor, profiler, and network. We'll kind of go through each of these. But they each allow you to not only edit within the browser, but also debug your code and adjust your styles and all of that. Oops. So console, of course, allows you to take a look at what's going on the back end of your web app. Inspector allows you to investigate particular nodes within your web app, allows you to see particular elements and go into each of them. Debugger allows you to go through and test for any type of bugs that you may have entered into your code.
So, quick question on the debugger. Do you know if Firefox debugger supports asynchronous stack traces now, or no still?
I do not know.
Okay.
Shane, do you know?
No, I don't.
It's kind of a new thing. Like I think Chrome just added it, but I know that sometimes a feature gets added in one or the other first.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a pain point for a lot of developers, myself included.
Yeah.
So they're basically putting together the caller and then the async result.
Yeah, so if you do a set timeout for a minute, it'll not just end with, because usually the problem with stack traces is that like 90% of the stack trace is in the framework, right? So a problem happens in this function, it's linked to a jQuery event, but you don't see where that jQuery event was assigned.
Right.
And they're fixing that so that now you can actually see past the framework code back to where you were doing your work again, even though it was an asynchronous click event or something like that.
Yeah, I can certainly use that. I actually don't use the debugger anymore because everything I do is async, and I never thought to see whether they were supporting async better. So I quit using debuggers a long time ago.
Yeah, I know that Node and Chrome were kind of in a race to get there first, and it looks like Chrome landed it first. So hopefully it'll make it back to Node. But it'd be cool to see that in Firefox. I mean, I guess I could do a test and find out for myself if it's there or not.
The cool thing that has been added to the debugger is that, from my perspective, is that I can actually debug Firefox itself.
Nice.
And that, in the work that I do, that's actually quite nice.
You then have the style editor, which allows you to edit your CSS within the browser. The profiler for all of the domains and files involved in your app and the requests that come through for it. Oh, actually, wait, network. Let's see, just get the file. So for example, here are some specific network request details that you can find through the network tool. Now we'll go into a little bit of advanced developer features. Oh, there's profiling. That's fine.
Question, so the other day I was watching Chrome and a talk on Chrome's profiler, and when it counts the percentage of time that it's in a function, not including like sub-functions, that's including it over the total time of execution versus, well, example I gave, what if I have one function that is called, 15 million times, but I've already optimized it, so it's very efficient. Chrome will show me, well, that is the one that's eating up most stuff because it's reading it across all 15 million times, even though it's maybe 1 millisecond or less. Do you guys have an option that'll also give you the count? So that way at least I could manually or automatically have it give me the, it spent this much time on it, but then I can divide by the actual count of times. So that way I can find out which function I really do need to optimize, because it only was called once, but it took 2 seconds or something like that.
So it looks like the column with running time is what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Actually looking at that. I would imagine that the column itself would be the count that you could derive from that, but I could be wrong.
Chrome had the self column also, and
And that's not what it was doing.
yeah, but maybe it is here.
We also have the highlight repainted area tool.
Wait, what does that do?
Paints what the browser is recompositing, and then, or that composes the browser then needs to repaint the total amount of pixels the browser needs to re-render
Oh.
for that composite is actually.
Oh.
So if you do something silly, you'll see your whole web page like that has just been reflowed, and that whole reflow is actually time intensive. So if you hit that kind of a thing where you're reflowing your entire web page, you actually like reconsider how you're doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually ran into a problem like that when I was customizing an input element, because you have to do that trick where you make it transparent and you make the element follow the mouse and all that. And whatever I was doing, I just moved it from one div to another, like either to a child or to a parent or something like that. And it made the difference of like 20x improvement on being able to follow the mouse cursor even when you're moving it fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is way cool.
We also have Scratchpad. Scratchpad allows you to enter some JavaScript and then take a look and see how it's going to actually function. No way, it's a little bit like a tinker.
So wait, how is Scratchpad different than the console? Does that run on the page, or does that? Hmm?
You can do old, it's like whole blocks of code and stuff.
It's easier, it's basically, it's the same thing as what you would enter into the single line console, but this is an easier way to edit. And
Oh,
it
it's just
also-
multi-line.
Yeah, it also allows you to save what you're doing to a file, so you can like save snippets of stuff you're working on and reload them.
There's also a responsive view. You can check out on this video.
Oh, that's nice.
Just shrink your bed browser.
Well, no, but it's nice to have it with standard sizes built in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those change every couple of months. But yeah.
Only when iPhone changes. And that's only once a year.
Well, you can even
You
see
Apple
in the
person.
drop down, there's a
so
remove
Apple.
preset, so you can actually, I
Oh,
imagine
cool.
if you can remove a preset, you can actually define a preset as well. So even though there would be a change there.
Yeah, so
could
if you
actually change that
specifically want to
preset as well.
target the Galaxy S17, you can.
So that is helpful to your development of an app.
Oh,
mobile
and
apps.
screenshot right there. That's nice too.
Where?
Right, it's got the screenshot button. That's way cool because then, I often want to take a picture of something, usually because I'm sharing something funny on a site or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But, you know, it's nice to have that button there instead of having to like drag to the edge and drag.
Yeah.
'Cause you do a little bit of pixel, I'm a perfectionist.
Aren't we all programmers?
You also have 3D DOM, which I really think is a pretty cool tool.
Oh my goodness.
That's for a long time.
Well, the original like web developer toolbar had something definitely not that cool, but
How they did it. That's great.
that is way cool.
It's been around for like a year.
Dude, I haven't used Firefox in a year.
This helps me out a lot when I'm on a site.
That is way, way cool.
So we do have some that are specific to mobile and app development. In particular, and we'll go over those, but the one that you can certainly see from the list is the Firefox OS simulator. But we also have remote debugging of mobile devices. You plug right in, and you can connect your mobile device to your desktop, and from Firefox actually do remote debugging.
Okay, so question. Does the Firefox main app on the phone, I guess this is different because the whole OS is HTML5, but does it allow you to see an error console from the phone, or do you have to connect via debugger to see error messages, like console.error?
Remember, you used to be able to see console error messages in Firefox OS,
'Cause-
like within the phone. I don't know if that's still the case though.
Because they took that out of mobile Chrome, or if they ever
Which
had it
is
in
so
there.
annoying. So
And I
annoying.
think they took it out of mobile Safari as well.
So
When they
annoying.
first were demoing Firefox OS, I remember them actually being able to pull up the source code, actually do view source within
Yes.
Firefox OS.
That
So I
is,
don't know
that's nice.
if that's,
I don't know if that's still there or not.
yeah, that was incredibly impressive when
Yeah,
I
it
saw
was
it.
incredibly impressive, and I hope it is still there, but I kind of vaguely recall somebody complaining to me about the lack of view source. And
The web's not open, so we can't view source.
Well, I mean, like, even if it's hidden away in, like, menu, advanced.
Right.
No, actually advanced. Like, yes, I'm a developer. Like, even if it's hidden under that, if it's documented, there's a way to get to it, that makes my life easier, you know?
I'm sure on the developer network the developer documentation network, you could find how to do that.
Good.
At the very least, you could find legacy documentation about how you used to do
It
that.
better be there.
Yeah, if it's not there, you put it
let me
back.
see if I can find it.
Shane's gonna look it up. Then you also have the Firefox OS simulator.
Yes.
My understanding is that this one is not necessarily delivered by default. It's actually an add-on that you have to download through the add-ons manager. But it is a super nifty little simulator, and it's very helpful. And as you can see, you can even do debugging of the simulator or your app through the simulator.
So will
which is
that
pretty cool.
will that have APIs like take picture? I mean, see, it's got good
Yes,
location.
it
That
should
one's
have
easy.
all of that.
Should have all the APIs.
It should have, yeah.
So I could
Because
even.
I mean, in order for it to be an effective simulator, you need to be able to have the robustness of all of the APIs that you would be using on a regular device.
So there's a good chance that if I were to open that up and use the gyroscope, it would use the max built-in gyroscope.
No, probably.
Probably not.
Or a gyroscope that you can
Oh, one is-
manipulate with a mouse.
Okay.
More like that. Some sort of virtual gyroscope.
That's what Chrome has.
We also have App Manager.
So is App Manager already built into mainstream Firefox, or was this part of the add-on?
I think it is built into mainstream Firefox. I don't think this is part of the app. This is a separate developer tool from the simulator. And as you can see,
So-
you're actually doing remote debugging of your app through Firefox,
Oh my goodness, this is beautiful.
as well as inspecting and editing. And then you can simultaneously ship updates onto your phone directly.
Yeah, let's just get rid of Android. Let's go to this.
JS console is allowed to do this sort of stuff.
Are there frameworks provided so apps can look a little similar?
In Chrome.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not,
With
every web app looks different,
With
but
Android?
you don't want that when you're
Yeah,
on your mobile.
Android.
Yeah, there is a boilerplate,
What are
and,
you doing with it?
JS console.
I don't remember the term that they use for it, but it's in the
Grab
latest
their
letter.
JavaScript snippet,
Oh.
you put it in your app, and then they give you remote debugging. You can execute JavaScript commands, you can inspect the DOM, all. Yeah.
I mean, see, they're editing the styles.
They're editing the OS,
They're
right?
editing the OS right
But-
there.
Nothing's gonna be committed when they do this, right?
That'd actually be really cool if you could save it from there, if that is.
Is it made
Will
permanent?
Firefox
It seems-
allow us to customize even the settings screen?
Well, there'd have to be some sort of like back out, because what if you hit delete by accident and then.
Yeah, reset, but I'm a customization freak, so.
That would be so.
Well, you do use the browser to edit your apps, and so he is editing directly onto that device right now.
This is too cool.
But I could save it such that I could make my Firefox OS, not that I want to, look like iPhone just to mess with Apple fanboys. Yes or no?
You can make it look however you want to
Okay.
make it.
Good.
That's the beauty this is like, I have been extremely lazy in actually digging into Firefox OS myself, but it's something I really want to do because it's kind of the first mobile platform that's really attractive to me as a person because I live in HTML.
Yeah.
And I've never, all the years of Apple apps and Android apps, I've never had an interest to dig in and create one. PhoneGap is as far as I went.
So what? This is a little off topic, but what major partners do you have? Like, do you have any big names that are developing
Orange,
apps for
right? Oh.
for Firefox, like Spotify or I don't know people like on their phone. Soundhounds.
Facebook.
We see.
Well,
what
Twitter and
Facebook.
Facebook did make specific apps for Firefox OS.
So,
I'm trying to think of
them
anything
making a
else.
specific app for Firefox OS is their mobile version, but when their server sees that it's coming from the Firefox OS, they also download an extra manifest file, or they have their mobile version and the Firefox version and the desktop version and blah, 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 blah.
I think that's gonna depend on the organization and how their architecture works and how they wanna do things, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be different for every organization. As far as what organizations we've actually partnered with, I don't know, but looking at the marketplace, like SoundCloud is there, Facebook's there, Twitter, YouTube,
So,
Like,
So this is like, it's really gaining real traction.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's, do you know how many apps there are in the marketplace?
I don't, and I've had that question a lot, and I haven't looked it up.
I-
We also had there was a major gaming company too that had partnered with us. It was the one that was helping us to develop out the WebGL
Unity,
library.
yeah,
Yeah.
Unity.
And Firefox OS, I mean, the browser in Firefox OS also fully supports WebGL. And so,
Yes!
So you're gonna
Yeah,
have
also-
like native performance 3D games in HTML5.
Yes.
So Firefox OS already supports ASM and all that WebGL stuff.
ASMJS.
ASM, that's what it's called.
Is it
Well,
called
no,
ASM?
That's what I've always heard it
Yeah,
as.
ASM.js, do you know?
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know either. I assume yes.
Well, it's gotta be, because how else are you gonna get that speed if you're not using ASM?
So what I do a lot is, oh, I shouldn't say a lot, but I often store things in local storage. That way, when the user goes to my site, it just already, loads it for them. The problem is if they don't have network connectivity, even though the data is on there, for whatever reason, it needs to check with the server if the HTML page is there. With Firefox OS, can I have, if I'm just doing that kind of web hosted thing, can I just have my standard responsive, mobile HTML that is delivered from my server, and then I include the manifest file, such that when they go to that URL, and if they're disconnected, it will just load the app as is, as if I had used the local storage data, as well as then stuffing the local storage HTML and just show it to them, or no?
So is your question,
Yeah, I don't know if I understand.
Because-
The cache that is,
First off, the manifest is what defines your app. And so when the user installs your app, that manifest is actually on the phone,
okay.
okay? And that manifest defines the paths to your app on your server.
I think you're talking about a different manifest. You're talking about the caching manifest.
Are you talking
No,
about app
I'm
So-
talking about the Firefox.
Yeah, because there is an extra manifest that's delivered in Firefox OS.
yeah, and do you know about app cache?
Uh,
I want to
Me.
take that as a no.
So app cache is a way that you can actually have, and this works in desktop browsers as well. You can actually have your resources cached onto the device.
As long as you never change the name of the manifest file. Otherwise, it is there forever and there's nothing you can do to fix it.
Yeah, app cache has its pitfalls.
even if you're offline?
Yeah.
So even if you're offline, those on desktop, even if you're online,
Oh.
you can load up a web page, and that web page can work with your local storage databases, whatever. I would suggest moving to IndexedDB instead of local
Right.
storage.
Yeah, IndexedDB you get 50 megs and it even works on iPhone.
But
What? How do I? Wait, just a quick question. Why isn't that the answer? Why isn't that the Firefox apps? Why do we need this extra separate manifest file?
You don't get
Permission.
hardware access until you have that.
Yeah, you need permissions and stuff. So my
You can't,
question,
like, fire up the phone from a web page.
Why can't I just get the direct hardware access in the same way that it asks for the camera access?
because then you're constantly pestering the user for every little thing.
yeah, so
And
because
we're
you're,
it's actually something we'd like to change in desktop as well, because pestering the user that you want access to, that you want to store local data because you're using it, pestering the user because you want to use the camera, pestering the user because you want to do this, that, and everything. It's like sites that do a lot of those permissions on desktop, users get bombarded with, do you want to give access to this questions, and it's a pain.
But also at the same time, for an Android app, I just see the entire list. I don't necessarily want to accept the entire list. I do want to have more granular control. I maybe do want this app and for it to record my voice, but I don't want it to notify me about anything. And if you merge that all together, then do I really actually have granular control? But I can't, because an entire manifest, it's not like the user can then go in and manually turn on or off stuff.
So, I don't know if they have granular controls in there. There's been a lot of discussion on granular controls, and to the level of like my last understanding of what people were thinking around it was that an app should be able to define those things that it absolutely has to have in order to work. And then it defines the additional things that it would like to have.
And that's worked out not so well on Android and
Probably not.
Well, no,
iOS.
it does make sense. Like both arguments make sense because like maybe I just want the app to be able to do everything, and I just want to say like accept all of it. Or maybe it's like I want to see if this app actually needs to use my camera. I want to see
Right.
what affordances I get from the camera
Right.
before I accept it. And so what he's saying there, that gives you both worlds.
Okay.
Because you get it says I have to have this, and the other things you could uncheck, and then when the app needs them, it could ask for them.
But the
that
problem is from my experience with Android and iOS, developers don't use it in that way. They get greedy and want as much as they can take. And in my understanding, the whole point of errors and error propagation is such that the developer can handle a situation where they're like, I have to have this, but now I have an error. And so then it's up to the developer to decide, okay, either I just don't perform that for the user, so my app is non-functional, or I pester the user again. And then maybe, because then what's the point of errors?
I think I'm going to have to become more familiar with the stuff myself to like really be able to answer it.
Sorry to start a debate.
No,
My bad.
I'm sorry.
There's no problem with starting debates.
moving forward, but still in the same subject realm, I kind of have this like recursion going on in my brain of like, so I'm visiting an app in Firefox, but it sounds like I could provide a lot of functionality from just a web browser that I almost could if I were installed on the phone. Like those two contexts are very similar, except one, permissions can be more explicitly granted at init, and on the other, permissions are probably more granularly accessed, and obviously I get more as a native app. But like, where's the transition between like I'm building a web app and I'm building a Firefox OS app? Like, do they go to mysite.com and there's just a little button that's like install this?
No, they go to the marketplace.
They have to go to the marketplace?
No, you can also install directly from the web.
But then you don't
that
get
was
the
the hard
hardware
work.
permissions.
No, because you'd still be providing the manifest, so it'd still do that. So I could have a web app that basically has an if Firefox OS give manifest, else use old school HTML5.
So you're saying the user doesn't have to find my app via the marketplace in order for me to get the hardware permission?
There's certain, so in
There are
earlier
certain-
slides, you got the three security layers.
Yeah.
So install from the web isn't going to give you all of the abilities.
So TCP access was one of the ones that had to go to the marketplace. If I do want TCP access, they can't just install it from my website. Okay, so the answer is no.
So
Well, it's yes and no.
Depending on what you
Depending on
want.
what your website is trying to do.
well, let's say I want hardcore TCP access. Could I have a little button that says, hey, install? They click install. It comes up with the Firefox OS dialog, like, do you want to install this app? They click yes, and then boom, now I'm switching from Firefox browser to my app?
No.
Okay.
It
Okay,
would
so
have to go through the market.
they literally have to exit my website, go to the marketplace, or is there like
Well, yeah, it'd be redirected to the marketplace.
redirect? So okay, so it would.
So you could actually link directly to your app site on the marketplace.
Okay, so they could
They
use a
could
crippled
install.
version of my app. They could click the link, and then they could get the full version of my app.
And if they do go to the marketplace, and then they download my app, where is it getting downloaded from? Firefox or my servers? When they're downloading all the assets, where is it coming from?
Is it a tarball or is it live?
It would have to come from the marketplace,
You would have to come up with-
because otherwise the marketplace can't guarantee
Validate
what
it,
was in
right.
that.
Mm.
But if we have a marketplace with
Well, it
a
could have
centralized
shadow.
authority, we don't have the web because it's not distributed and decentralized and peer-to-peer.
Well, no, you could still do that because you could do SHA sums and be like, well, you know, if I download this package and it matches the SHA sum, then it's the same thing. And if it doesn't, then throw error.
So can you edit an app and remove the ads?
Can you edit an app?
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Yes!
Can you edit any?
Brilliant!
I suppose theoretically you could.
Hallelujah!
From-
Amen. It is my device, and if you've given me access to it, I can cut that out.
Well, but there is something to be said for security. I mean, you made the argument that that's not the web, but the fact of the matter is there does need to be some sort of security. We need to be able to guarantee some element of security for the user. And if you're asking for certain elements of accessibility to their particular devices, we, on our behalf, need to be able to tell the user, these guys are vouched for. And you don't have to worry that they're going to screw with your device
Well,
through these APIs.
we all trusted Microsoft with ActiveX, right?
No, we didn't. It was just turned on by default. You opened your email, you got a virus.
Just like do not track on Microsoft. On
Right.
people.
At some point,
So part of it also is quality assurance, right? This is like, one of your primary functions is that this is a phone, right? And
Oh, I
you don't-
forgot that.
You know, you don't want like some app chewing off your battery. You don't want some app being
what if I
incredibly
do want
flaky.
an app chewing up my battery? But Google or Apple's obsession with these standards goes against what I as the user want. For instance, with iOS, right? Like, I want an app that
So
is
you're making two assertions that I would completely agree with. One is that you as a user want an app that's going to chew up your battery,
yes.
right? I would say that we probably have user research somewhere that like says that that's really unrealistic. If we want to have a share of the market where we actually have a percentage of the mobile market, which is a goal we have. It's a goal we have because mobile is the future of connectivity and the web is the platform that we want to choose. So we have to have a stake in that market, right? We have to have quality for the users, otherwise users are not going to pay for our phones, people are not going to want to use our stuff. Carriers are not going to want to use it if we don't control quality. So from that perspective, when we get to a lot of these certified apps and stuff like that, it is about quality assurance.
So we're guaranteeing that our citizens are safe and comfortable.
Well,
And because at
so
the end of the day, that's
You're
it's-
conflating stuff. You as a developer can go in and totally change all of this.
okay.
So are you saying that you as the user of your phone want
Yes.
to be able to install an application that will use all the battery?
Yeah,
Then write that application and install it on your
on
phone.
my phone.
Don't make it available to everybody else through the marketplace and expect it to work.
So there's a developer switch, so
You
you
know
can
what I mean?
see
But-
what something
Does-
does.
Does that make sense?
What if one of my friends wants to use it?
So then that's so side loading is the question there.
Okay, yeah, side.
They're just asking the same thing.
Yeah, good,
So you
okay.
do you throw a switch on the phone if you want to see an app behave as if it were signed when you're just developing?
Yeah. There we go, good.
That is an excellent question.
That is, I have.
Okay.
I don't answer
That
that.
answers everything.
Can I root the phone? Is there a bootleg marketplace?
Oh, is it?
So,
Yeah.
so you're like, I'm a desktop person, number
Uh-huh.
one. And so, like, I just don't know. And so,
So I think So the signing is really a matter of whether you can be shipped in the marketplace. There are phones that are specifically targeted for developers and phones that are targeted for end users. So like the phones that most people in Latin America go and buy through their carriers are most likely going to be unable to be tested the way that a developer would want to be tested, would want to test their actual apps. And so by purchasing phones like, or being given phones like, we had our developer preview phone was the Keyon, and now we're going to have the Flame, which is a developer reference device. Those, I imagine, would have the ability to be able to install your app pre-signing, to be able to go through robust testing.
So I cannot show my mom, who has the end user phone, my app,
Most
because I
likely not.
cannot sideload it.
Do we have an app, do we have a phone we can look at?
It's downstairs, or I mean upstairs.
I don't have mine handy.
I kept it with the table.
Okay.
To show it to people.
So I'm kind of excited about this. Can you get this thing on Verizon?
No.
No,
It's
it's GSM band, and so you can buy the phone through ZTE, but because it's GSM band, it would only operate on T-Mobile or AT&T.
Is there like an Android phone I could root to put this on there?
Yes. And there are instructions on the Mozilla Developer Network.
Are you asking, is there CDMA?
Well, so
CDMA Android phone?
yes, like could I'm wondering if there's a good Verizon phone that I could root, wipe Android out, and
There
put
are
Firefox on.
instructions for like the Galaxy S2 and S3 and Galaxy Nexus,
Okay.
and a couple of HTC devices as well. I think also the Nexus 5 and 4.
And
Be rooted.
do you, we are getting so off topic, sorry, but do you think that because where you're in control of the hardware and the software, I believe that Firefox can make a partnership and make a phone that works reliably and that works well to the point that I might enjoy using it. If the experience is shoddy because I'm using an unsupported phone that's hacked together with the OS, then I wouldn't use it realistically because I'd be like, oh, this sucks.
So,
Do you think that the state of those roots and ports is at a level where with the Galaxy S3 that phone is compatible enough that you could have a good experience?
Yes.
okay.
Okay.
And that's because the only way that we were even able to test Firefox OS when it was in initial development was by flashing it to other phones.
I looked at the docs and they were pretty onerous to flash. We need to have a flashing party. Can we do that?
Yeah, I would totally be up for that.
But yes, there is a list of supported devices, and that's because they've been tried and true as being able to support fully Firefox OS. When we were first developing Firefox OS, we needed the ability to be able to put it on a device, and so at the time, because those were the most prevalent devices, we focused on being able to flash to those.
Can you update the firmware on ZTE Open? Or is there a new,
Well, there's the OpenC now. That's it.
Okay, is it faster? Is it better hardware?
Yeah.
Put that on your website.
Do you have that one upstairs too?
Firefox
No.
OS user install.
I just have the flash.
They would have to go and sideload it through.
I mean, the Flame.
Yeah.
And the Flame is more? Is it being sold yet?
Not yet. In the next like 4 months, it will be.
But there's no lock.
On eBay as well? Or?
I don't know if it'll be eBay or if we'll be selling it through our own site.
Our stuff is all about being open.
We've all been very, very excited about the Flame because
We also have to have.
throughout most of this process,
The normal
because we were collaborating
But as long as
with
there is that
manufacturers
other
and
ability.
carriers, we've had to
That
compromise.
Thank you.
in
Sorry for getting
where
all-
it's, the phone's distributed, what languages can
all
be
the
on it, what
source
features, all of that sort of
build it
stuff.
yourself.
The Flame is the first phone where we have total control over how it's shipped, where it's shipped,
That's
what
you
will be on it. And so, I'm not sure they've determined exactly what distribution channel will be. Everyone is very excited about the Flame.
Download Firefox OS as your own build and load it onto your phone. You don't have to unlock your phone to do that.
Thank you for
The price is averted.
You
Brain explosion presented.
should be able to sideload through the web developer tools.
Just my like quick Google and cursory glance at Dietrich's blog
Oh,
about
yeah.
sideloading tells me that it's possible. I don't know exactly how to do it.
Cool.
There we go.
Yeah.
Teacher's blog would be a good resource for that.
Thanks.
So there's also prototyping with JS Fiddle. You can write your code as you might normally when making a JS Fiddle. You just append your manifest to your Fiddle
Nice.
URL, paste it into the link into the Firefox OS Simulator, and install the app,
Dang.
or what it says on step 3.
Is there a page, can I just Google that and there will be something that'll give me the instructions?
There should be, yeah.
Okay.
Now this is going back to your question earlier, Brad, about components and styling, right? In order to make sure that the phone, your app looks uniform with the phone, right? There's this building Firefox OS site that you can go to, and actually contains building blocks in the HTML5 and transitions in CSS for you to be able to customize your app to look like a Firefox OS app and match the stylings within it. In fact, yeah, so here's, for example, the building blocks. You can actually see what it looks like. You can take a look at the CSS link, the HTML code. You can either, as you saw on this page, you can download all of this goodness locally, or you can simply take code directly, code snippets, and inject them into your phone or into your app. But it has a bunch of different things like action menu, edit mode, buttons, status, switches, tabs, toolbars, even icons. It's pretty cool. Mozilla Brick, I'm not, to be completely honest, I'm not familiar with Brick. Do you know much about Brick?
No,
There you go.
bricks are heavy.
I have to just skip that one, sorry. You also have the boilerplate. The boilerplate app helps to walk you through the Web Activities API and show you how that operates in your app or within your operating system. Now, we've also been, as far as, I believe I remember hearing that we have been working with PhoneGap because we want to be able to promote HTML5 and these web standards as the way of writing apps for mobile. But we also understand that developers want to be able to publish their apps on multiple devices, across multiple platforms. And so we've worked with PhoneGap to try to improve the wrapping process, the native code wrapping process, so that all developers have to do is write their mobile apps in HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS, and have a better experience pushing them through into native code wrappers through PhoneGap. Yes?
So I'm confused on this topic. Cordova is owned by Apache, but PhoneGap specifically, the build is owned by Adobe, right? So is this running through Adobe's servers that we're gonna? Because I think the build was something you had to subscribe to and pay for. So I'm just kind of confused on this stuff. Is this open source stuff here that?
PhoneGap?
Well, I know PhoneGap is open source, but the build component wasn't, or terribly confusing.
So I don't know what Adobe did with PhoneGap. I know the PhoneGap guys from before they went to Adobe. They're
Okay.
from Vancouver as well. And they at the time were building out a build infrastructure where you could have them do the builds across a bunch of platforms for you. And my understanding was that was going to end up being a paid service. But to actually build a PhoneGap app and be able to distribute it yourself, you didn't need their build system. This was more of a convenience because if you wanted to build for 5 different platforms and you didn't have all those platforms, you could send it out to their build farm and they would build it for you. Now, if Adobe changed that somehow, I don't know.
Okay. I do know that there is a guy from Adobe walking around at this conference who is one an
It
extra
does.
little piece of knowledge I can throw out.
You may be giving me more questions than answers.
Yeah, right. So now you're going to be bombarded with a ton of different resources that you can go to learn more about Firefox OS app development. So all of these links can help to direct you toward information not only about the environment within Firefox OS, but advances that are being made and where it's being sold, how many partners we have, devices, all of that stuff, but also on actually developing specific apps and where to get them. The primary documentation that will be helpful will be for app development. Will be here. It will go over everything to do with Firefox OS. It also walks you through the actual app process from design to building your app to publishing it on the marketplace. It's very comprehensive and very helpful. Yeah, this is the overview page. Gives you, yes.
Unrelated, but if, or maybe we should just ask this afterwards, it has to do with the TCP spec.
Yeah, maybe afterwards.
Okay.
And I don't know if I'd even be able to answer it. But the Firefox OS overview page is it's kind of more of a marketing material. It will identify like what devices we're shipping or are shipping Firefox OS, what partners are shipping them, all of that sort of stuff. The marketplace is where your app is published and is discovered by the public. The Firefox Marketplace Developer Hub. So as you can see, the whole design, build, publish segmentation here. All of this will lead you back to the Mozilla Developer Network. That's where most of this documentation is hosted. But it's all walks you through that whole process from the beginning design, conceptualizing the app, to publishing on the marketplace. The Mozilla Hacks blog frequently contains information about developing Firefox OS apps. This particular presentation was put together by one of our, actually I think the developer engagement team, and the Hacks blog itself is written primarily by a developer engagement speaker named Robert Nyman. And he is very well in tune with what's going on with Firefox OS. Gives a lot of presentations about app development and about advances with Firefox OS. So it's a very helpful resource. There's also this video series on hacks.mozilla.org that you can go to and watch videos about this type of development. These two guys, well, Christian is part of developer engagement. Desigan, or Dees, is part of business development. Do you work with him?
He's more on the mobile side, and,
Yeah.
and the group I'm in is all more desktop and services.
Mm-hmm. These
But
guys have a
we
very interesting
interact a
video
lot.
series. Yeah, the Firefox OS Wiki, like I mentioned, the Mozilla Developer Network. And that's it. So, thank you. So, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah,
See if
so
we have an answer?
if there was a new open standard proposed that gave TCP access without the permission setting that you guys have set up, would Firefox implement that? Or
Firefox OS or Firefox desktop?
Firefox browser?
I don't think it's a matter of limitations within the technical specification. It's self-imposed regulation that we have dictated
Right.
for our marketplace.
I understand in terms of the OS apps, but if a
It's also, it's not just us, it's also the cloud
Other-
providers. TCP/IP connections are very expensive in every imaginable way on mobile. If you hold open a socket, it's expensive on network itself, it's expensive on your battery life, it's expensive just all around. Having TCP/IP connections open on your device is expensive. so this is why there's a lot of other types of APIs, like the push notification API. The idea behind that is that you shouldn't need to keep those sockets open. You push notifications to your app on the phone. And that app then is brought to life when there's a notification that's important for the app to do. And then you can make your connection out, your XHRs, or your CPI connection to do the thing you need to do in the moment. But for kind of regular use, you don't really want to have people creating all these socket connections. So this is probably why that's at a stricter level.
I agree with that. That makes sense. But I'm more, I guess, interested in. I understand the expense of that stuff, but if there was such an open, standard that was presented, and for whatever reason, other browser vendors did implement that, would Firefox follow suit, or would they stand and say, we're probably not going to do this because we do believe that the expense is more important than those standards?
So, like, you have WebSocket, that's the standard.
Mm-hmm.
That's available to any web page. But if it's a standard, like, we won the browser war by having standards.
Right.
Right? Winning that war means we have an ecosystem of web browsers, that there isn't one dominant player that gets to do whatever they want. And we also have to abide by that. So while we do experiments and we do custom APIs and stuff like that, it's all with the intention of standardization. And standardization means everybody does it the same way, as much as possible. That breaks down sometimes the reality of business and blah, 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 and everything else. So I would imagine that if it was something that was made a part of the HTML5 standard itself, that would be available in web pages that you browse on the phone. But web apps themselves, even though they are based on standards, in order to operate in the mobile environment right now, they do have custom APIs, and those are not standard HTML5 things.
Okay.
Right? Some of them will get pushed out to standards.
Yeah.
All of those APIs have been discussed in the standards bodies. But right now, just the way that hardware and everything works, it's just not realistic to just have a wide open, anybody, Wild West environment. Users aren't going to end up liking it.
Okay.
So, does that kind of get to the question that you're
Yes,
asking?
it's just disappointing, but yes, it does.
What's the disappointing aspect? Is it?
Because pipes at the end of the day are going to be controlled by the physical owners of those pipes, which at the end of the day is going to be owned by where the property is, and the property is going to be ultimately owned by the government that controls that property. And so I'm much more the type that imagine someday that maybe I as a user don't want to go to these type of websites, but I can go to a website, and that website I say yes, I want to give it Bluetooth permission, and then on a website alone, not any, whether it's on my computer or my phone, if it does have Bluetooth on that device, I can start connecting with other Bluetooth devices that happen to be on the same web page and form a type of darknet, or not even a darknet, but just an immediate mesh net without having to download anything extra or fancy. So that way, let's say you're at Coachella or some sort of event like this, we don't have to worry about lousy networks that are running through, or well, there is the local network here, but oftentimes what we're doing is then running through the local network, through the main network, and then back down. It'd be really nice.
So I think the contention is, or kind of the difference in perspective is that we want a user to actually install and agree to allowing an app use Bluetooth.
Mhm.
And you don't want that.
Well, I want them to be able to go to a website, my website, and either approve or deny that. and not have to go to some centralized authority, whether that be the government or Google or Firefox, that then is then at that point where they accept it. I want the permission and the controllability to be distributed and per the user's request rather than some governing body that has said this is safe for use.
So the question I have related to that is, it seems like if somebody, like let's say that there's just a button on my website that says install, and there's no app store, nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like it downloads the package and boom, it allows it to run. I'm imagining that on the back end, when that package goes, I don't know how you're doing module stuff, like if you're using a require type system or whatever, but I'd imagine that, you know, if my app goes to use something that permissions haven't been granted for, it doesn't matter what the
Throws an error.
code is, it would get an error,
Yeah.
right?
I would imagine that's the case.
So it seems like what he's saying could be feasible where, you know, you could say like, you know, I go into options and I say, I'm a rock star. And then when I open up web pages, they could give me an install button and I could just be like, no app store, I'm a rock star, and install it that way every time. But this phone would still be able to control security.
Right. That'd basically be undoing tons of work.
Well, no, I mean, actually, I don't know what level of work is in there. Actually, I'm really kind of just going off of, I know about the conversations around battery life that have happened and how certain APIs are bad for battery life. And I know how some of those people think, and I'm taking kind of the 3-layer security thing from the slide here, and I'm kind of meshing this together in my head and trying to give you a response that I think is relatively accurate. And so, you know, you bring up a good question right there, and I really, like, I don't have enough knowledge to be able to, like, really be accurate with
How much of an impact could we as just random Joes have on potentially what, from, of course, our assumptions are a better approach? I assume not. Or,
we haven't put as much
You can
thought
start
into
the
it.
discussions
Those.
in public mailing lists.
sorry, say that again?
You can start the discussions at least in public
Okay.
mailing lists.
Yeah, and actually, really, the first thing I would do is like make sure what we're saying here is completely accurate.
Right.
Yeah.
Before you get all
Storm in and go.
you know,
I heard Jeff talk about these.
Because I had,
because I haven't done the Firefox OS app, and
Mhm.
I haven't, you know, touched this stuff in literally 2 years, and you know, so I'm just putting together pieces that I
I
kind of
understand.
collect in my
Thank you.
head, and trying to be like, okay, understanding how Mozilla works and how people there think and all this stuff. This is like, and this is probably how it's going. Make sure that it's accurate.
Accurate.
And then,
Yeah.
and then ask the questions. Like we have all of our forums are open forums. You can get in there and ask the questions and be like, well, why doesn't it work like this? And somebody can give you an answer why it doesn't work like that. If you don't like the answer,
Right.
then you can start an argument.
Or start,
Don't start with an argument.
well, a discussion, or just
No,
go
well, I mean,
and start.
I would say, don't start with, I don't want people spying on me. I want to do this. Say, I just want to do this. Is it possible?
I totally agree with the peer idea though. I think that is really cool. And I do also think that whole security thing is like,
Well, it says on here that you can host your own, and then it says you can make your own store, but it's not super clear on what exactly that would entail, but it makes it sound like you could host essentially
Have
your own store, which would then you could authorize, and they just have to authorize adding that store to their.
They just have to trust your story.
Yeah, exactly, trust your store as a source, whereas the
Wow.
marketplace is by default trusted.
Sorry, the user trusts my store.
Yeah, so the user
Okay.
just has to accept that.
Yeah,
It says on here, you can create your own store, it just, I don't know exactly how.
That's good.
Alright.
So,
Yeah, it's just like, it's actually, it's the same thing as, so
Wonderful.
the marketplace was actually originally built out of AMO, Firefox that you can go in and change that says what the add-on's URL is. And that by default is AMO, and so AMO is a trusted install location for add-ons. And you can add more, you can have multiple add-on. So I'm fairly certain Marketplace works exactly the same way. There's probably some preference in there where the Marketplace URL is there, and if you put a comma in another URL, you have another Marketplace.
Cool.
Yeah,
And
'cause
there's likely a way for users to do that as well.
All this fear and tension mounting up.
So
it has
what,
a whole marketplace API you can, looks like you can
Build.
yeah, that you can use. to make
Good.
it.
what's the candy or Greek goddess name of the latest Firefox OS?
I don't think that we have those.
Well, how about a version number, like
1.4.
1.4? So I'm looking at the website about devices that I could potentially purchase and use with my current plan.
Mm-hmm.
Stinks that cell phone networks are so divided, because I'd kind of like to try it out and then maybe
Well, that's
switch.
mostly just Verizon.
Well, and Sprint, Verizon and Sprint, and even
Sprint allows you to
even
get both.
AT&T has different gigahertz than T-Mobile does for like HSPA versus HGPA
Well,
or all that mess.
ATT doesn't have HSPA plus.
Okay. Well, anyway, those
Exactly.
things are all different. But like, how do I tell if a device is supported for a particular version of Firefox OS, or like, I mean, I guess the thing is, Firefox OS. It sounds like you guys are going down the route of you're doing the smart thing. You're pairing the hardware with the software, and so for right now, developers can sideload it to Android devices. But in the future, that's probably not going to be a thing. It's like you buy a Firefox phone or you don't use Firefox OS. Is that? That was two ideas completely separate. But the ending result is, would there be any use in actually buying a non-Firefox phone? Because if I buy a phone to run Firefox on, I want to be able to get the updates. I want to be able to run the next version of Firefox. I don't want to have to buy a new phone every time I want to try a new version of Firefox. So if that means I need to get a Firefox phone, then I'll get a Firefox phone.
Do you know how updates work?
Because I don't see any list of version numbers. I see tier 1, which includes emulator, desktop, and then a phone where it says warning, newer builds of Firefox may not be able to boot.
Oh yeah, that's the Unagi, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unagi.
That's an old phone.
That's a really old phone.
Yeah.
But it's in the tier 1 device, and then like,
That's because that page hasn't been updated in a while.
okay.
For a long time, most of the developers were using Galaxy S2 phones, and basically wiping Android off and putting Firefox OS on there.
But see, Galaxy
I have
S2 is
no-
down on tier 3.
I have Note 2, so I could load Firefox OS on this and be safe and switch bootload between Android and.
There is documentation on how to bootload between the two. But I think that it's specific to the Galaxy S3 or S2.
Not the Note 2.
No, because ever since we've begun to team up with device manufacturers, the need to be able to flash onto a phone hasn't really existed. There are Firefox OS phones, and so
So the intent is that eventually, in order to use Firefox OS, you're going to have to buy a Firefox hardware. Well, approved device manufacturer. You couldn't.
I don't know.
You can take the source, and as long as you can find drivers that will work with, because there are, even in Firefox phones, there are
So-
proprietary drivers from the manufacturers that.
So you're not locking it down, but most likely going forward, only this Firefox Plus phones are going to be supported.
Because there was gonna be those modem drivers and things.
And that makes
that
sense.
We don't have access to, right?
Right, and that makes sense. Like,
We may, but it's not like.
So we need to start a hardware company with Android boards and. start-
I think that's a smart move. I think it's better to pair hardware with software where the market is diverse, and you're too small to be like, yeah, we're gonna have a sucky operating system that works on every phone versus we're gonna have an awesome operating system that works on these two phones. Especially when the phones are cheap. Because like $100, like if I have to pay $100 and I get to play with the thing and I decide I don't like it and I recoup 70 of that when I sell it, like that's not so bad rather than paying.
$25 a phone coming soon.
Oh, it's not on.
That's crazy.
It's not gonna be hardware that North Americans would be terribly happy on because we're used to our high-end Galaxies and iPhones and all that kind of
I
stuff.
think he said you could.
Well, you know what? A 4 megapixel camera is more than good enough since the lens is only like a 1 megapixel or less lens on like, you know, even the iPhone with its, you know, 11 megapixel camera, the lens on there is so crappy that I mean, you don't need a lot of that high-end stuff because it doesn't work. It's just marketing numbers to bump up and be like, we use something more expensive.
Are you thinking the
Does it support 4G? Do you know if it can use it, if the hardware has it, or is it?
If the hardware has it?
Yeah, so like.
Yeah, if the hardware has it, it doesn't
can-
really have anything to do with.
Oh, okay, so it doesn't, just, okay, cool. So just not talking about.
And okay, other question not related to Firefox OS at all. Do you know of a provider that will give you like, I want to buy 5 gigabytes of data, and whether that lasts me a month or that lasts me a year, I get 5 gigabytes of data?
If you find one, tell me.
Because because if you could say like this company does that, then I would be clicking the buy button right now. Because then I'm like, I don't care. I'll just play with the phone. I'll use it as long as the data lasts me. If I like it, then I'll switch
So
providers.
The
If I
T-Mobile
don't-
plan is usually really economical.
Yeah.
Isn't, like yours is a $10 one, right? Don't you have a
Well,
limited
so
data
I'm on
this month?
I'm on AT&T
Oh.
specifically because, my carrier in Canada is not compatible with, T-Mobile.
Mhm.
So I can use T-Mobile for my calls, but I would end up on Edge data or,
Mhm.
you know, something crappy. So I'm on AT&T, but, I did use T-Mobile for a little while until I started caring more about having data. And the thing that I like about T-Mobile is they have their pay by the day, and which is like $3 a day, and it gives you unlimited calling and data for that day. And you only get charged for the days you use it. And that's pretty freaking awesome.
When did they introduce that?
Verizon had one of
Freaking
those.
long time ago.
Really?
I was
I've not heard
using
about
this,
that.
I was using this like 3 years ago, and really it was because
I don't think the services provide those anymore because Verizon had that for a short while as well.
T-Mobile still has it.
Oh, okay.
I don't.
AT&T also has GoPhone, but they used to allow data on GoPhone, but they did away with it. You actually have to do a monthly subscription now.
Man, there's so many things messed up from, we can't even use the air and the wavelengths in our own atmosphere to communicate without paying proprietized company or hardware.
Well,
without
see,
there
I'm
being
actually okay with that
proprietors.
because I would prefer not to be microwaved. So I think it's actually okay that the government regulates some of those bands because as it is, like everybody's already getting cancer, and I'm not entirely unconvinced that it doesn't have to do with the fact that we are 100% of the time, every single day for our entire lives, penetrated by high frequency X-rays, essentially.
Can you trust the government to keep you protected on that?
I don't trust them, but at least there's some regulation, right? So going through me right now is probably about like a watt of energy as opposed to 10 watts of energy, and
But
that might
most-
keep me along a little
Most
bit
of the
longer.
wavelengths are larger than you yourself, so your body doesn't even, it's not even affected by them. It's only if the wavelength itself is smaller than you in which you could get the problem of you being affected by it.
Well, I don't know how big 2.4 gigahertz is, but I'm pretty sure it's not that big. Now the AM radio.
Here it is, T-Mobile, $3 a day, unlimited talk, unlimited text, unlimited web, first 200 megabytes at 4G speed.
Oh.
Oh,
Boom.
So 200 megabytes, this is in one day though, right, so.
So I'm gonna use a gig in a day.
200.
I use a gig in a day when I use. So I DJ, and sometimes I will download a gig of music at an event. I'll just be like, I'll create a playlist and I'll be like, cache everything in this playlist locally. Boom. I don't care whether I'm going to use it or not. If the internet goes out, I want all these songs. Okay, I'm kind of wanting to get a Firefox phone like right now. Did you bring any with you?
I think you
Such a
should.
good idea.
Yeah, you should.
I don't have any with me. I'm actually gonna be figuring out who the hell to talk to get the phone that Jeff has. Because that's a dual SIM phone. But it's not released yet, so I'm gonna have to
What-
figure out who's on my request.
What do you think the price point on that is gonna be? Do you have any idea? Is it like that's not the $25 phone?
No.
No.
The Moto G is only like $100. Are you guys gonna be able to size
I
that
would
one?
think it would be about $100, but that's just what I think.
So but you just released this ZTE-C, right? But you're also releasing
in
this other
May.
phone?
I think in May, wasn't that May 2013, maybe?
Oh, is that 2013? I saw May, and I was like, wow, this thing's new.
I think it was 2013, I don't know.
The open
C,
I thought
Open
the
C.
Open was.
Was the OpenSea May this year? No, because that would have been just now.
Yeah, it would have been right now.
Wasn't it just a few days ago?
I'm stealing your pen.
So should we like
Everything.
open up an emulator or something and build a little app?
Yeah, he already did while we were all
While we were
arguing.
bickering,
He
you actually got work done?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I got the battery, I got the test, the template app.
Like that little fellow, you, I'm writing it out.
It was cool, actually, it was really nice.
Let's see.
I mean, I could dog food this maybe. Does Spotify have an app on here? That's what I need to know.
Marketplace.
Seriously? You're going from Apple
Look,
fanboy to
no, here's the thing. Here's the thing. If it works, okay, if it works, if it's consistent, and if I can do the things I want to do, I would totally prefer to have an
Can-
open source phone.
consistent
And you can
in
make the
doing the
phone
things that you want to do are usually completely contradictory.
No, like, if it's
Right?
something,
Oh yeah, this was, the ZTE OpenSea was 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so what would be the advantage
So
to
I
holding
imagine
out
it
for
would
the
be
other phone?
comparable to some extent.
The only thing for me with the phone that he has is that it's dual SIM. And being from Canada and spending as much time as I do in the US,
Oh.
I need to
The OpenSea
have
and the Open, they
both.
only
I
have
need to have
4G.
SIMs in both countries.
Right.
That's why
So
the-
that's why I want that phone.
Right? It's like
That's been my biggest hold off
Technology, I
is
guess.
switching over.
Other
to
parts of the world,
Firefox OS.
yes.
Yeah, I think it's because markets were the crystal, that I have 4G yet.
Yeah.
All right, if it's got Spotify, I will buy a phone.
Thank you.
Notice how he just keeps adding one more requirement
Yeah.
and one more requirement.
Well, no, I took away the requirement.
If it was a.
I
if it
took
was a
away the
cheap
cri-
plan,
I took away the requirement that it has to be on Verizon. I would be willing to just buy the phone and pay the T-Mobile thing to experiment with it for a couple months. You know, so I buy the phone for $100. I sign up for $90 worth of, that's 3 months of I'll do the month-to-month T-Mobile, get the 5 gigs a month or whatever it is they offer. That's plenty for being able to test it out and use it and see if I like it. I could, I'd try using it as the primary phone for calling my friends and stuff. And if I like it, if it's consistent, if it doesn't crash on me, and I can just like plug in USB, open up Firefox, and be like, boom, app is better now.
I
Just
saw
some-
SoundCloud on there, but I didn't search for Spotify.
I don't know if Spotify's on there.
Does it run Flash? Probably not.
I don't think so.
When I saw that in the video, when you submit to the marketplace, it asks you if it will require Flash. So,
Because
Well, eventually, even if it does, it won't really matter.
yeah, probably won't class.
If Xiaomi makes progress,
If
it
Xiaomi
won't
makes
matter.
progress, we have a project called Xiaomi, which is a open source version of Flash.
How is that coming along?
I have no idea.
I haven't heard anything since October.
I know that people are actively working on it, just because I occasionally see a privacy bug around it, but I don't really follow. There's too many projects to keep on top of.
That's true.
there is no, let's see, posted as of December, Adobe Flash is not available for Firefox OS. But I think Adobe kind of quit. I don't know. I heard rumor that Adobe was just kind of giving up on Flash on mobile because it sucks and all it does is drain the battery and it can't even run the apps.
That's what I had heard too. I had heard that in a kind of call.
Yeah, but I thought Finnick recently, like, sometime in the last 6 months, I thought Finnick actually ended up supporting Flash.
I don't remember. I do remember the whole Adobe's giving up on Flash for mobile. Because that was part of a Market Insights spotlight for a kind of call. I don't remember what part of the roadmap that was in, or what impact that had on the roadmap.
I guess I should pay more attention to whether.
I guess you should just spend all day, every day on the phone in
In
meetings.
meetings, yes.
Yeah, right? I already feel like I do that, and I'm just working on localization.
You still
Okay.
recording? Did you guys get useful stuff out of this?
Yeah, like I'm clicking the buy button on a ZTE OpenSea, so
Yes.
For sale.
Yes. My first commission check.
Yeah, you can pay
in the mail.
2 cents.
You didn't put my name right there, right?
boom.
Woo-hoo.
So you at least got me to try it out. Like I'm at least excited about it. I